1. A vintage radio receiver sits on a dusty workbench, its glowing orange dial flickering in the dim light of a workshop. Cinematic lighting, 4K, photorealistic. 2. Close-up on a weathered hand adjusting a chrome frequency knob, the skin textured with years of labor. Photorealistic, 4K, cinematic. 3. An oscilloscope screen shows a perfectly repeating waveform, a sharp carrier tone cutting through the green static background. 4K, technical precision. 4. Heavy rain needles against a dark window pane at dusk, the blue-gray light of a storm washing over the interior of a county office. Cinematic 4K. 5. A row of communication towers stands silhouetted against a bruising, purple-streaked evening sky as lightning flickers in the distance. 4K, atmospheric. 6. An old paper service map of Briar Basin, yellowed and creased, spread out under the harsh white light of a desk lamp. Cinematic, photorealistic. 7. A paper cup of coffee sits next to a pile of printed outage reports, steam rising in thin, wispy curls. 4K, hyper-detailed. 8. The glowing screen of a spectrum analyzer shows a signal jumping across a dead frequency band, bright green against deep black. 4K, cinematic. 9. A directional antenna sits in the back of a utility van, its metallic ribs reflecting the dim garage lights. Photorealistic 4K. 10. Rain streaks across the windshield of a four-wheel drive vehicle, the headlights cutting through the silver threads of a downpour. Cinematic 4K. 11. The dashboard of a truck illuminated by dim green lights, showing a portable receiver with a signal strength meter pulsing. 4K, photorealistic. 12. A flooded access road at night, the water reflecting the orange glow of a distant, flickering security light. Cinematic 4K. 13. A heavy iron gate stands open with a cut chain lying in the mud, the metal cold and wet under a flashlight's beam. Photorealistic 4K. 14. Tall pine trees swaying in a heavy wind, their needles heavy with rain, framing a dark mountain pass. 4K, moody atmosphere. 15. A white Ranger truck parked at an angle on a muddy shoulder, its driver's side door wide open to the night. Cinematic 4K. 16. Close-up on a windshield from the inside, where two fingers have traced a crude arrow through the thick condensation. 4K, photorealistic. 17. A radio microphone rests on a damp truck seat, its coiled cord tangled in the shadows. Cinematic 4K. 18. A flashlight beam cuts through the thick, misty air of a forest, illuminating individual droplets of rain. 4K high contrast. 19. A lone boot print in deep, dark mud, slowly filling with rainwater. Photorealistic, 4K, cinematic. 20. The dark silhouette of a hydro station sits at the bottom of a drowned valley, looking like a dead tooth against the black water. 4K, cinematic. 21. A line of sodium security lights along a wet service road, every third light flickering orange while the others remain dark. Cinematic 4K. 22. Broken maintenance catwalks hanging over dark, churning water, the rusted metal glistening in the rain. 4K, industrial decay. 23. Intake towers rising like monoliths from the surface of a black lake, their concrete stained with age. Cinematic, 4K, 4K. 24. A brushed aluminum sign bolted to a concrete wall reading Acoustic Guidance Trial in clean, modern lettering. Photorealistic 4K. 25. Water streaming from the threshold of a heavy steel blast door, the entrance to an underground facility. Cinematic 4K. 26. Inside a concrete tunnel, emergency lights burn a pale, industrial green at floor level, casting long shadows. 4K, atmospheric. 27. The deep mineral chill of an underground corridor, with moisture glistening on the gray stone walls. Cinematic 4K. 28. A laminated site schematic with a red marker circling a section labeled Resonant Guidance Array. Photorealistic 4K. 29. A dry erase board with the frantic message, IT knows the routes now, scrawled in black ink. Cinematic 4K. 30. A service junction underground with new cable runs strapped neatly to the ceiling, contrasting with rusted old pipes. 4K hyperrealistic. 31. A figure sitting against a concrete wall, hands clamped over their ears in a gesture of intense concentration or distress. Cinematic 4K. 32. A medic's hand, wearing a blue nitrile glove, holding a white gauze pad against a textured gray wall. 4K photorealistic. 33. Reflections of green emergency lights in a puddle on a concrete floor, ripples moving in a steady rhythm. Cinematic 4K. 34. A wide shot of a massive turbine hull, the original machinery removed to leave deep, circular foundation pits. 4K cinematic scale. 35. The guidance array, a series of metallic rings and cable bundles hanging from a high ceiling, pulsing with a faint blue light. Cinematic 4K. 36. A flooded lower chamber beneath the turbine hull, work lights glowing under the water like sunken stars. 4K photorealistic. 37. A group of figures standing perfectly still in a row, their silhouettes cast against the glow of an industrial array. Cinematic 4K. 38. A close-up on a person's bandaged head, the white cloth stark against the dark shadows of an underground facility. Photorealistic 4K. 39. Dust particles dancing in the beam of a flashlight within a dark, cavernous space. 4K cinematic. 40. A heavy maintenance gate made of iron bars, a metal bar dropped across it to secure it. Cinematic 4K photorealistic. 41. A control room with glowing monitors reflecting in a pool of water on a desk, abandoned coffee cups nearby. 4K detailed. 42. A computer screen displaying a red error banner. Phase lock cascade, manual override failed. Cinematic 4K. 43. Close-up on a weathered valve wheel, rusted and difficult to turn, in a damp hydraulic room. Photorealistic 4K. 44. A yellow strobe light flashing silently in a dark concrete chamber, casting rhythmic shadows. Cinematic 4K. 45. A heavy metal lever being pushed downward by two sets of hands, the metal groaning under the pressure. 4K cinematic action. 46. A massive geyser of water erupting through a floor grate in an industrial hall. 4K high-speed photography style. 47. A figure in a soccer hoodie standing in a dark lobby, their feet bare on the cold, wet tile. Cinematic 4K. 48. The moment of a single muzzle flash in a dark room, illuminating dust and falling plaster in a split second. 4K cinematic. 49. A woman in a motel bathrobe reaching out a hand toward the camera, her face caught in a strobe light. 4K photorealistic. 50.
Utility truck fishtailing through thick mud on a mountain road, rain lashing against the windows. Cinematic 4K. 51. A dashboard radio with all its lights flashing, showing multiple frequency bands active at once. 4K photorealistic. 52. The sun rising over a misty valley, the light catching the tops of the pine trees after a storm. Cinematic 4K. 53. A clean, modern office space where servers are being confiscated, black cables trailing across a white floor. 4K photorealistic. 54. A woman looking out a window at a rainy city street, the reflection of a computer screen in the glass. Cinematic 4K. 55. A white, puckered scar on a forearm, looking like a jagged bolt of lightning against the skin. 4K hyperrealistic. 56. A lone man sitting in a dark communications room, the only light coming from his headset. Cinematic 4K. 57. A folded, torn piece of paper with a circled sentence, the ink blurred by old moisture. Photorealistic 4K. 58. A portable message board on a dark highway, its orange LEDs glowing in the rain without any text displayed. Cinematic 4K. 59. The silhouette of a lone walker on a misty bridge at night, the fog swirling around their feet. 4K atmospheric. 60. A macro shot of a radio speaker vibrating slightly, dust jumping on the mesh surface. Cinematic 4K. 61. A view from inside a dark tunnel looking out into a rainy forest, the light at the end of the tunnel blurred. 4K, cinematic. 62. An overhead shot of a flooded valley, the tops of old buildings barely visible above the waterline. 4K, aerial photography style. 63. A close-up of a spectrum analyzer showing multiple overlapping waveforms in different colors. Cinematic, 4K. 64. A hand tracing a line on a weathered topographic map, the paper rough and textured. 4K, photorealistic. 65. A heavy steel chain lying snapped on a muddy path, the metal links covered in rust. Cinematic, 4K. 66. A flashlight lying on a concrete floor, its beam pointing into a deep, dark corner. 4K, high contrast. 67. A cluster of blue nitrile gloves discarded in a pile near an industrial entrance. Cinematic, 4K. 68. The green glow of an exit sign reflecting in a dark, polished hallway floor. 4K, atmospheric. 69. A person standing in front of a wall of rack servers, their silhouette framed by thousands of tiny blinking lights. Cinematic, 4K. 70. Water dripping from a rusted pipe, each drop frozen in midair by a high-speed camera. 4K, photorealistic. 71. A textured concrete wall with a faint, painted arrow pointing toward a dark staircase. Cinematic, 4K. 72. The interior of a truck cab at night, the only light coming from a glowing CB radio. 4K, atmospheric. 73. A wide shot of a hydro dam at night, the massive concrete wall wet and shining under a full moon. Cinematic, 4K. 74. A pair of heavy industrial earmuffs sitting on a metal bench, their yellow plastic scuffed. 4K, photorealistic. 75. The flickering screen of a CCTV monitor showing a grainy, empty corridor. Cinematic, 4K. 76. A hand-drawn map on the back of a receipt, showing a path through a building. 4K, hyper-detailed. 77. A close-up of a pair of eyes reflecting the green light of a computer screen in the dark. Cinematic, 4K. 78. A thick bundle of colorful wires disappearing into a hole in a concrete ceiling. 4K, industrial aesthetic. 79. A person in a heavy rain slicker looking over a vast, dark valley from a high ridge. Cinematic, 4K. 80. A set of brass keys hanging from a hook in a deserted security office. 4K, photorealistic. 81. A trail of wet footprints leading down a long, sterile corridor. Cinematic, 4K. 82. An old-fashioned analog meter with a needle vibrating near the red zone. 4K, technical detail. 83. A close-up of a person's ear, showing the intricate detail of the skin and a small silver earring. Cinematic, 4K. 84. A heavy industrial fan spinning slowly in the shadows of a turbine room. 4K, atmospheric. 85. A row of glass insulators on a power pole, glowing with the orange light of a sunset. Cinematic, 4K. 86. A figure standing in a doorway, silhouetted by the bright white light of a storm outside. 4K, high contrast. 87. A close-up of a radio frequency chart, with handwritten notes in the margins. Cinematic, 4K. 88. A puddle in the middle of a road reflecting a red stop sign. 4K, photorealistic. 89. A massive iron gear, half submerged in dark, oily water. Cinematic, 4K. 90. A person's shadow cast long across a concrete wall by a single, distant light source. 4K, moody. 91. A close-up of a copper grounding wire attached to a damp stone wall. 4K, industrial detail. 92. A weathered wooden signpost in a forest, its arrows pointing to nowhere. Cinematic, 4K. 93. A bank of old telephone relays, their mechanical parts frozen in time. 4K, photorealistic. 94. A view through a chain-link fence of an abandoned industrial site at dawn. Cinematic, 4K. 95. A close-up of a person's hand gripped tightly around a metal railing. 4K, hyperrealistic. 96. A single green leaf lying on a gray concrete floor, a stark contrast of color. Cinematic, 4K. 97. the reflection of a lightning strike in a dark, still pool of water. 4K, dramatic. 98. A heavy steel door with a small, reinforced glass window showing darkness on the other side. Cinematic, 4K. 99. A close-up of a digital clock showing 2:13 a.m. in a dim room. 4K, photorealistic. 100. A vast field of antennas under a starry night sky, looking like alien trees. Cinematic, 4K. 101. A person's face partially illuminated by the blue light of a smartphone screen. 4K, cinematic. 102. The texture of a damp, moss-covered concrete wall in an underground tunnel. 4K, macro. 103. A lone red light blinking on top of a distant hill in the middle of the night. Cinematic, 4K. 104. A stack of old VHS tapes in a cardboard box, their labels handwritten. 4K, nostalgic/gritty. 105. A close-up of a microphone grill with a single drop of condensation hanging from it. Cinematic, 4K. 106. A wide shot of a misty river at dawn, with a small boat tied to a wooden dock. 4K, atmospheric. 107. A person's hand pressing a red emergency button on a control panel. Cinematic, 4K. 108. The texture of a rusted iron ladder going down into a dark pit. 4K, photorealistic. 109. A close-up of a silver emergency whistle on a black cord. Cinematic, 4K. 110. A series of orange traffic cones lined up on a wet, dark road. 4K, high contrast. 111. A person looking at their own reflection in a cracked mirror in a dimly
lit room. Cinematic, 4K. 112. A bundle of white sage tied with string, sitting on a wooden table. 4K, detailed. 113. A close-up of a typewriter key hitting the ribbon, a single letter appearing on paper. Cinematic, 4K. 114. A wide shot of a dark forest with a single path lit by moonlight. 4K, atmospheric. 115. A person's feet in heavy boots walking through a shallow stream. Cinematic, 4K. 116. A close-up of a compass needle spinning erratically. 4K, photorealistic. 117. A row of lockers in an abandoned locker room, one door swinging slowly. Cinematic, 4K. 118. The glowing embers of a campfire in a dark, rainy woods. 4K, cozy but eerie. 119. A close-up of a person's thumb tracing the edge of a sharp knife. Cinematic, 4K. 120. A wide shot of a desolate mountain range under a heavy, gray sky. 4K, cinematic. 121. A person's hand reaching out toward a flickering candle flame. Cinematic, 4K. 122. A close-up of a barcode on a metallic tag. 4K, technical detail. 123. A view of a distant city skyline at night, blurred and out of focus. Cinematic, 4K. 124. A person sitting on a bus at night, their face reflected in the dark window. 4K moody. 125. A close-up of a drop of water falling into a still pond, creating perfect concentric circles. Cinematic, 4K. 126. A wide shot of an empty warehouse with sunlight streaming through high windows. 4K, industrial. 127. A person's hand holding a small, glowing transistor. Cinematic, 4K. 128. A close-up of a textured brick wall with a single missing brick. 4K, photorealistic. 129. A view from the top of a lighthouse looking down at the churning ocean. Cinematic, 4K. 130. A person's silhouette walking through a field of tall grass at sunset. 4K, atmospheric. 131. A close-up of a glass of water with a single ice cube melting. Cinematic, 4K. 132. A wide shot of a snow-covered landscape under a bright, cold moon. 4K, cinematic. 133. A person's hand adjusting a telescope looking at the moon. Cinematic, 4K. 134. A close-up of a peacock feather, showing the intricate colors and patterns. 4K, macro. 135. A view of a dark alleyway with a single, flickering street lamp. Cinematic, 4K. 136. A person's hand writing in a leather-bound journal by lamplight. 4K, photorealistic. 137. A close-up of a spider web covered in morning dew. Cinematic 4K. 138. A wide shot of a desert landscape with a single, twisted Joshua tree. 4K, cinematic. 139. A person's feet walking on a sandy beach at night, leaving glowing footprints in the bioluminescence. Cinematic 4K. 140. A close-up of a vintage pocket watch, its gears visible through the back. 4K detailed. 141. A view of a thunderstorm from an airplane window, lightning illuminating the clouds. Cinematic 4K. 142. A person's hand holding a small, carved wooden owl. 4K, photorealistic. 143. A close-up of a record needle moving along the grooves of a vinyl record. Cinematic 4K. 144. A wide shot of a lush green forest with a hidden waterfall. 4K, cinematic. 145. A person's silhouette standing on a cliff overlooking a fog-filled valley. 4K, atmospheric. 146. A close-up of a textured oil painting, showing the individual brushstrokes. Cinematic 4K. 147. A view of a quiet suburban street at night under a full moon. 4K, photorealistic. 148. A person's hand holding a single, bright blue marble. Cinematic 4K. 149. A close-up of a bumblebee on a bright purple flower. 4K, macro. 150. A wide shot of a clear blue ocean with a single white sailboat. Cinematic 4K. 151. A person's hand touching the bark of an ancient oak tree. 4K, photorealistic. 152. A close-up of a strand of DNA model. Cinematic 4K. 153. A view of a starry sky through the branches of a tree. 4K, atmospheric. 154. A person's silhouette dancing in the rain under a street lamp. Cinematic 4K. 155. A close-up of a fountain pen nib with a drop of blue ink. 4K, photorealistic. 156. A wide shot of a medieval castle on a hill at sunset. Cinematic 4K. 157. A person's hand holding a small, silver locket. 4K detailed. 158. A close-up of a single snowflake on a dark woolen glove. Cinematic 4K. 159. A view of a busy city intersection at night with long exposure light trails. 4K, cinematic. 160. A person's hand carving a piece of wood with a small chisel. 4K, photorealistic. 161. A close-up of a cat's eye, showing the vertical pupil and colorful iris. Cinematic 4K. 162. A wide shot of a serene mountain lake at dawn. 4K, cinematic. 163. A person's silhouette meditating on a mountaintop. 4K, atmospheric. 164. A close-up of a piece of honeycomb with honey dripping from it. Cinematic 4K. 165. A view of a winding road through a colorful autumn forest. 4K, photorealistic. 166. A person's hand holding a small, glowing firefly. Cinematic 4K. 167. A close-up of a set of piano keys, with one key being pressed down. 4K detailed. 168. A wide shot of a field of sunflowers under a bright blue sky. Cinematic 4K. 169. A person's silhouette standing in front of a giant window looking at the stars. 4K, atmospheric. 170. A close-up of a single drop of dew on a blade of grass. Cinematic 4K. 171. A view of a bridge over a river at night, its lights reflected in the water. 4K, photorealistic. 172. A person's hand planting a small sapling in dark soil. Cinematic 4K. 173. A close-up of a nautilus shell, showing its perfect spiral. 4K detailed. 174. A wide shot of a tropical beach with white sand and palm trees. Cinematic 4K. 175. A person's silhouette walking through a fog-filled park at night. 4K, atmospheric. 176. A close-up of a single red rose in a glass vase. Cinematic 4K. 177. A view of a quiet library with sunlight streaming through the windows. 4K, photorealistic. 178. A person's hand holding a small, ancient coin. Cinematic 4K. 179. A close-up of a crystal prism, with light refracting into a rainbow. 4K detailed. 180. A wide shot of a vast lavender field in bloom. Cinematic 4K. 181. A person's silhouette watching the sunset over the ocean. 4K, atmospheric. 182. A close-up of a single coffee bean on a textured wooden surface. Cinematic 4K. 183. A view of a historic cobblestone street in Europe at night. 4K, photorealistic. 184. A person's hand holding a small, colorful bird's egg. Cinematic 4K. 185. A close-up of a single chess piece, the knight, on a wooden board. 4K detailed. 186. A wide shot of a majestic waterfall in a rainforest. Cinematic 4K. 187. A person's silhouette looking at a giant moon in the night sky. 4K, atmospheric. 188. A close-up of a single drop of rain on a window pane. Cinematic 4K. 189. A view of a peaceful countryside with rolling hills and a farmhouse. 4K, photorealistic. 190. A person's hand holding a small, smooth river stone. Cinematic 4K. 191. A close-up of a single dandelion seed floating in the air. 4K detailed. 192. A wide shot of a vibrant coral reef under clear blue water. Cinematic 4K. 193. A person's silhouette standing under a giant, blooming cherry blossom tree. 4K, atmospheric. 194. A close-up of a single, bright green emerald. Cinematic 4K. 195. A view of a dark, star-filled sky with the Milky Way clearly visible. 4K, cinematic. 196. A close-up of a single golden key on a velvet cushion. 4K, photorealistic. 197. A wide shot of a lone radio tower on a fog-shrouded cliffside. 4K, cinematic. 198. The final shot, a digital radio screen fading to black, with one small green dot of light remaining. 4K, photorealistic.